Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Shukran jazilan. Thank you very much for attending this first session of two sessions. Maybe you have not seen my email. If you haven't, this session is going to be a first session of two. The second one is going to be on Saturday, 10 to 2 o'clock, and it's going to be face to face. It's a practical session. We are going to apply what we are going to discuss today. So I prepared a warming up slide to kick off this problem-based learning session. Now, so the objectives of the first session of this first session, the first part, is about what and why. We are going to describe what is PBL and then why PBL. And then we will have some sort of a discussion. And then we will continue with the second half of today's session, which is going to be about the process. How we are supposed to do it. I will start with the definition, but before I do, I would like to ask you to answer this warm-up questions. And I will be happy if you can open your cameras also, please, if you don't mind. So the first question, what is the difference between learning approaches and learning situations? Yalla. When you read this term in medical education literature or books, you often find learning approaches and you sometimes find learning situations. What is the difference between these two? Because when we come to define problem-based learning or PBL, we need to refer to this term again. So what is the difference between learning approaches and learning situations? Can you hear me?
Can I say something, sir?
Yes, please, you have.
Learning approaches is the intended method used by the student to achieve certain objectives. It may be exam oriented or it may be knowledge oriented or something like strategic.
Okay,
So
you introduced
approach is the
another.
attitude of the student. It is by the student.
It is by the students, okay? And
Yes.
you also said the word strategy. Are the strategies usually by the students?
Strategic, sir. This is my personal experience more than that. That many of the students focus not on knowledge. They just want to gather points which are important for exam. So that is like a technique or strategy. They are focusing only on that thing during
But
lecture.
you are now talking about the students. And
Yes. As I said, approach is by the student. So they
but
use
the
different
term,
strategy.
but this term, when used in medical education circles,
Okay,
it
sir.
usually addresses the learning approaches adopted by the curriculum, the learning strategies adopted by the curriculum,
Okay.
the learning situations adopted by the curriculum. So here, usually these terms are used in relation to curriculum and not the students.
Okay.
You are right. When you use approach as far as the students are concerned, yes, they address the issue from their point of view, whether they are exam oriented, whether they are expecting this or that. So their approach, their strategy is different. But the term is used in the circles, in medical education circles, to mean learning approaches adopted by the curriculum and learning situations.
Okay.
But till now, I have not heard a differentiation between these two terms. When used when you are describing the curriculum, you will say, in our curriculum, we are adopting these or the following learning approaches. We are adopting the following learning situations. What is the difference between situations and, between situations and approaches? And by the way, there is a chapter, a full chapter in the book written by John Dent and Ronald Hardin. The title of that chapter is called Learning Approaches and Learning Situations. So what does that mean from the point of view of the curriculum? Anybody? Okay, let me explain and move to the next question. When used, learning approach means it is a strategic approach used by the curriculum. And Professor Hardin in 1992 identified 6 main or major learning approaches used in health professions education. And these approaches include student-centeredness as an approach. It's a curricular approach. It's an approach adopted by the curriculum. A problem-based learning is another approach. So problem-based learning is an approach. This is why I started by asking this question. It's a strategic curricular approach. It's a learning strategy of the curriculum. While learning situations are the situations identified by the curriculum as learning opportunities or learning activities or learning, they call them learning activities, they call them learning opportunities, they call them learning situations. So they also call them learning experiences. So experiences, situations, opportunities, activities, these 4 terms are used interchangeably to mean the situation in which the students learn. So it is different from the approach used. So a situation, for example, a small group discussion or a tutorial is a learning situation. While in that learning situation, you can adopt different types of learning approaches. For example, if it is using a problem, then the approach in that tutorial is problem-based learning. So this first question is to differentiate between situations, opportunities, activities, and experiences, and on the other hand, learning approaches or learning strategies. The second question, what is student-centeredness? What is student-centeredness? Of course, you heard the term, and it is actually one of the strategic goals in Al-Ma'rifa's University strategic plan. One of the goals is student-centeredness. So, Muhammad Sharik, yes, go ahead.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
Yeah. What I understood, sir, from the student-centeredness, like we have 2 approaches, either teacher-centered approach or student-centered approach. The centeredness for me, I think it's mainly derived from who's the main driver for learning or controller for the learning as such. Usually our traditional way, usually the teachers knows everything, the curriculum, the approach, and the learning objectives and everything. And students are only acting as a passive receivers. But in student-centered approach, it's become the opposite. They become more active learners and they drive the learning. But definitely not according to their liking, but it should be in a proper direction, supervised by the teachers.
Thank you very much. Well explained. Thank you very much. If I may add just the final point you mentioned, you said directed by, so it's a direction, it's an approach. So it is controlled by the institution, but it is all centered around the student. So the whole organization of the curriculum takes into consideration, as you mentioned, the driver, who is driving most of the activities or maybe all of the activities. So the driver is the student. So student-centered, this means, first of all, thank you very much. It is one of the approaches. It is one of the approaches. It's one of the curriculum approaches. So any institution can adopt an approach in which, in that approach, the student is the center of the organization of learning. Okay. Next question. What is the difference between self-directed learning and directed self-learning? What is the difference between self-directed learning and directed self-learning? Anybody?
Doctor?
Yes, please, Tisam.
If we refer this question to the previous question,
Okay.
we can set the direct self-learning. It is one theme or one part of student-centeredness.
Okay.
And the self-directed learning, it is related to teacher-centeredness.
Okay. I think you reversed.
Yes.
Self-directed learning, both of them are student-centered approaches, but the self-directed learning, it is not only the driver who is controlling what to learn, when to learn it, how to learn it, is the student. While the directed self-learning, it is self-learning, but it is directed by the teacher. So the teacher intervenes in what happens, but what happens is self-learning. The students self-learn, but it under the direction of the teacher. If you give them a seminar title, and then you give them clear objectives for that seminar title, and you even give them some, you give them direction to where they can find learning material related to this, you are now directing self-learning. You are not leaving it, and you specify an ultimatum for the students to actually report to you. But self-directed learning, and it's usually not, it is usually it's a curricular approach in the United States of America, where they give the students a menu, and the student selects whatever he wants to learn, when he wants to learn it, how to organize it. At the end, he just fulfills the curriculum outcomes, and then he graduates. This is not applied everywhere. It is applied in certain universities in the United States. But directed self-learning is what all other universities are doing. They are giving room for the students to learn, but they are directing that learning. Sharik, are you raising your hand again, Sharik?
Yes, I raised initially actually, but I can just want to add one
Yes, please.
comment to it, that when I'm teaching this directed self-learning and self-directed learning, for me both are same, except in the directed self-learning, the teacher is making sure that students are not making it sleep-directed learning.
Yes. Thank you very much. Yes. Or actually self-directed sleep, huh?
Yes.
Okay, finally, in this warm-up slide, what is the guided discovery approach? Guided discovery approach, the GDA. Actually, this is a concept, and this concept applies to directed self-learning, so that the teachers do not convert the directed self-learning into they control it completely. So you do not give the students everything in directed self-learning. You leave some room for them to discover, but you guide them towards the discovery. It's an important approach, and you need to learn a little bit about it. Okay, based on this warm-up questions, we start our description of problem-based learning. I start with this quotation by Albert Einstein. He said, education is not the learning of facts, but the training of the mind to think. This is a very important quotation, and it very much relates to what we are going to discuss today. Now, we will start by describing or by defining what is problem-based learning. In fact, there are many definitions in the literature. There are lots of books written on the subject. And as you can say, this one is called problem-based learning and inquiry approach. And then they are actually making inquiry larger than other text words. So there are many definitions. I'm going to pass very quickly through some of them by authors. And then I'm going to describe the types of problem-based learning, very important. And then what is a PBL curriculum? Is there anything called the PBL curriculum? And at the end, we need to describe the types of problems used in problem-based learning, because these three, after we define, these three are very important because they will determine how you will approach a problem-based learning in your curriculum. First, there are many definitions. For example, Bode in 1985 said, it is the principal idea behind problem-based learning is that the starting point for learning should be a problem, a query that the learner wishes to solve. So this is the first definition by Bode, Bound in 1985. Now, in that, he went further in his paper and he said, study is triggered by recognition of the fact that certain items of information are necessary and must be acquired in order to understand the problem and or make a decision. So this is the description which is found in a paper written by Bound in 1985. Now, there are also shorter definitions. For example, before him, Schmidt in 1983 defined problem-based learning as an approach. As we mentioned in our warm-up discussion, it's an approach in learning and instruction in which students tackle problems in small groups under the supervision of a tutor. Also, you see, this definition and this approach was introduced 37 years ago, 37. So it's not a new thing. It was described a long time ago. Now, he also called it an educational strategy, whereby a practical problem constitutes the basis for the learning of relevant information. Now, as you can see, he used approach and he used educational strategy, and these two are actually used interchangeably. You can call it a strategy or an approach. Now, Davis, in his recent paper, 1999, defined it as learning opportunities. Remember, I differentiated between learning opportunities and learning approaches. And now Davis used the term opportunity to describe problem-based learning. So he said, in the learning opportunities, solving problems is the focus or starting point for student learning. So he defined when we call a learning opportunity a problem-based learning opportunity. Now, students work on the problem to identify and search for the knowledge that they need to obtain in order to approach the problem. So as you can see from these two slides, it's an approach, it's a strategy, it's an approach within a learning opportunity or an activity in which the students start with a problem and then identify what they need to know, learn it, and then come again and try to solve the problem. And by the way, we will know later, solving the problem is not an aim. It's a process, it's a procedure, not an aim on itself. Now, there are two types. The first one is called problem-based learning proper. Proper means students learn through the problem. where the actual solving of the problem is not necessary. The learning is necessary, and learning through the problem, learning through trying to solve the problem is done, but it is not necessary that you end up by solving the problem. This is called problem-based learning proper. It is used in the early years of the medical education or any healthcare professions education program. And the focus is on the understanding and explanation of the features of the problem. Why I highlighted these three words? Because they are keywords. So if you want to understand, you want to train your mind, and then you can later explain what? Explain what? Features of the problems. The features of the problem, and later on we will talk a little bit about what do we mean by features of the problem. Now, minimum prior knowledge is expected. So you cannot just start from scratch. You expect some background knowledge, but not necessarily all information about the issue being addressed, but a minimal prior knowledge is expected and is necessary. Now, the second one is called problem solving, PBL. Problem solving, which is PBL problem solving, where learners work to try to solve the problem. And in that, what is the difference between these two? It is usually used in the later years of the medical education or health professions education curriculum. And a certain amount of prior knowledge is a prerequisite. So you need to have adequate background knowledge to address problem-based learning, the problem-solving type. So we have two types, the PBL proper, in which minimal prior knowledge is expected, and it is used early in the curriculum, while problem-solving is usually used a little bit later. Later can be any time, starting from second year up to 6th year. Now, so these are the two different types as far as the process is concerned. The process, if the process starts with a problem and the knowledge is minimal, the background knowledge is minimal, and the solving of the problem is not quite necessary, this is called PBL proper. If the solving of the problem is expected, an adequate amount of background knowledge is a prerequisite. Now, are there PBL curricula? What is a PBL curriculum? You probably know that there are certain schools worldwide. One of them is regional here, the Suez Canal, the Arabian Gulf University, University of Jazeera, the McMaster, of course, Maastricht in the Netherlands. They built the whole curriculum on problems. They built the whole curriculum on problems, which most of people in the medical education field think that might not be necessarily to you. You can use PBL in any type of curriculum as an approach, not necessarily you convert the whole curriculum into PBL. So in a number of schools, the whole curriculum is based on problems. Maastricht, McMaster, Suez Canal, University of Jazeera, Arabian Gulf University. Here in Saudi Arabia, because Suleiman and Rajhi are using the curriculum of Maastricht, the whole curriculum is based on problems. Now, in many schools, PBL is used as one of the approaches. So it's not necessarily the whole curriculum is. And in those curriculum, which are in a sense hybrid curricula, these hybrid curricula use different amounts, different amount of problem-based learning in their curriculum. So you can say, well, I am going to use it in 10% of my courses or my course, 25, 50% of my courses, etc. So it is not necessarily necessary to convert the whole curriculum into problem-based. Now, other approaches are used so all approaches must be structured and aligned so that they complement each other. I mean, other approaches, other curricular approaches are used in addition to problem-based learning, and they must be synergized and aligned so that they complement each other. And we will discuss this a little while. Now, any questions so far? Any comments so far? This is just the definition. Two types, PBL proper, problem-based learning proper, and problem-based problem-solving approach. And then we have the PBL curricula, and we have the hybrid curricula. Now, this is a very important point in relation to what I just mentioned.